Let's start with a real question. Have you ever felt invisible to someone you were drawn to? You show up, you say all the right things, you even look great, yet somehow he moves on. And you're left wondering, why doesn't he think about me the way I think about him? Here's the harsh truth no one tells you. Attraction isn't just about what you say or do in the moment, it's about the impression you leave behind after you've gone. Most women were taught that to capture a man's attention. It's about mastery, emotional mastery. Because when you master the way you make someone feel, you hold a key that even the most beautiful face or perfect body can match. How subtle sensory triggers shape memory, and how to leave someone emotionally hungry for your presence without needing to beg for attention. And I'll warn you now. Once you internalize these principles, there's no turning back. You'll stop wasting energy on short-term validation and start embodying the kind of woman who haunts a man's thoughts, in the most empowering, self-respecting way possible. So stay with me until the very end, because part 6 might be the most counterintuitive yet most powerful strategy you've never used before. I promise, it's not what you think. But it's the exact emotional switch that turns intrigue into obsession. Ready to become unforgettable? Then let's begin. 1. Trigger his curiosity early. There's something rare and deeply captivating about a woman who doesn't lay all her cards on the table. In today's hyper-connected world, where everything is instantly accessible, where you can scroll through someone's life in 60 seconds flat, mystery has become a lost art. And yet, the most unforgettable women, the ones who live rent-free in a man's head, aren't the ones who overshare, who explain every thought, or who make themselves completely known. They are the women who trigger curiosity on a deep, almost primal level. Not by pretending to be someone else, but by choosing what to reveal, and more importantly, what not to reveal. Let's start here. Human beings are wired to close loops. When we get a taste of something, our brain wants to complete the picture. That's why cliffhangers in TV shows work so well. Every interaction, every conversation, you are either feeding him a complete, predictable story, or you are creating a series of intriguing gaps he wants to fill. When you meet someone and immediately volunteer every detail about your past, your job, your plans, your feelings, you are handing them the entire novel without giving them a reason to read it. You may feel more connected at first, but emotionally, he has nowhere else to go. It ends there. But when you speak with intention, when you answer questions without rambling, when you share moments that hint at depth without giving it all away, you create the sense that there's more to uncover. And here's the truth: we value what we work to understand. We chase what we don't fully grasp. Curiosity, especially male curiosity, is a powerful engine. When activated, it will drive thoughts of you long after the date ends, long after the last text. But you must earn that curiosity, not by being evasive or cryptic in a juvenile way, but by living in a way that's layered. Ask yourself this: when was the last time you walked away from a conversation and left something unsaid, not out of fear or insecurity, but by choice? When was the last time you answered a personal question with a short smile and said, "That's a story for another time"? When was the last time you let a moment breathe instead of filling the silence with noise? The point here isn't to play games, it's to invite imagination. The more he has to imagine about you, the more time he spends mentally interacting with the version of you that lives in his head. And trust me, that version can be more powerful than anything you say or do. Stoic relationships operate from a deep understanding of human psychology. They are not built on constant effort or excessive interaction, but on emotional gravity. A woman grounded in stoicism doesn't beg for curiosity, she commands it by being whole without being loud. She's self-possessed. When she speaks, it matters. When she doesn't, it matters even more. No, he loses interest when he feels like he already knows everything about you. If you've ever had a man come on strong and then back off just as fast, it's often because he ran out of things to discover. Curiosity is the currency of connection. And once it's gone, so is the desire to invest. So how do you actually apply this? It starts with redefining your internal narrative. You don't owe every detail of your life to every person who asks. You don't need to prove you're interesting, you need to be interesting. And interesting isn't about being flashy. It's about depth. It's about having passions, boundaries, experiences, and choosing how you share them. It's about knowing that the most compelling parts of you are often the ones no one sees until they've earned that privilege. And let me be clear, this isn't about being cold or distant. Let there be edges. Let there be questions. Because those questions are the soil where attraction grows. Think about the last time someone made you curious. It probably wasn't because they told you everything about themselves. It was likely because something about them felt different, less rehearsed, less desperate to be understood. You sensed there was more beneath the surface, and that more is what kept you thinking about them. That is your model. And in a Stoic relationship, this kind of mystery is foundational. Because Stoicism isn't just about being unemotional, it's about being centered. It's about not needing to be constantly seen in order to be powerful. When you are okay with not being fully known, don't overshare under the illusion that vulnerability equals intimacy. True vulnerability is earned, not dumped. Don't confuse attention for connection. Just because someone is listening doesn't mean they're invested. And don't underestimate the power of silence. Silence used well is one of the most seductive tools you have. Not as a weapon, but as a rhythm. Every word you speak should add value or tension. Everything else is noise. So the next time you're in a conversation with a man you're attracted to, ask yourself, am I feeding his curiosity or satisfying it too soon? Am I creating a reason for him to think about me tomorrow, or am I making it easy for him to forget me tonight? That simple shift in awareness can change the entire dynamic. It turns you from another pleasant encounter into a question mark he wants to solve. And men, by nature, are hunters of meaning. Give him something meaningful to chase. Live a life full of stories, but tell them like chapters, not the whole book. Leave moments incomplete. Let your eyes say what your mouth does not. Let your actions hint at layers he hasn't yet earned access to. That's how you make him think about you constantly, not because you're always there, but because your energy lingers. Where emotional memory starts to root itself in his subconscious. You become the unanswered question he can't stop asking. And in that space between knowing and not knowing, you become unforgettable. When you embody this kind of feminine stoicism, you're not just attractive. You're compelling. And compelling is far more powerful. So as you begin to shift the way you interact, notice how curiosity builds when you create space. Watch how attention sharpens when you stop trying to impress. And feel the difference in yourself when you realize you never had to do more, you just had to be more intentional. This is the beginning. The spark. The seed of obsession is curiosity. And you hold the match. 2. Create emotional anchors in your conversations. If you truly want someone to think about you constantly, you have to go beyond the surface. Being beautiful can grab attention, but it's emotional resonance that makes a man remember you in the quiet moments, when no one else is around and he can't explain why you're still on his mind. This is where emotional anchors come in, those subtle, deeply personal experiences you create together that leave a psychological imprint. Emotional anchors are not accidents. They are created when you combine vulnerability, presence, timing, and intensity in a way that makes a moment unforgettable. Think about it, we all carry emotional memories. The song that reminds you of your first heartbreak. The smell that brings back a childhood memory. The restaurant where something important was said. Our brains are wired to connect strong emotions to sensory experiences, and once that connection is made, it's extremely difficult to break. That is exactly what you want to create with someone you want to stay in their thoughts. You want to craft moments so vivid, so emotionally rich, that his brain literally tags it as important. You create emotional anchors by being intentional with your energy. That means being fully present when you talk. That means asking questions that make him think deeper than surface-level answers. That means being willing to be vulnerable in a world that rewards detachment. You want to stand out? Then be the woman who doesn't treat conversations like interviews, but like invitations. Invite him into moments that feel meaningful. Tell stories that trigger shared emotion. If you talk about a challenge in your life, don't just share the facts, share how it made you feel. What it taught you, how it changed you. When you do that, you're not just sharing information, you're creating emotional impact. You're building a bridge from your life to his empathy. And once he crosses that bridge, even just a little, he starts to feel emotionally invested. Men are not taught to open up easily. But if you become a safe. But let's go deeper. Anchors are also created through humor. A shared joke, a playful phrase, a funny nickname, those things seem small, but they are massive when it comes to mental recall. Our brains love emotional contrast. So when you create laughter during a moment of tension, or softness during a moment of intensity, it becomes memorable. For example, let's say during a date you tease him gently about a story he told you, and both of you burst into laughter. You call him by a nickname that only makes sense to the two of you. That nickname, that one line, becomes a private emotional token. Every time he hears it, even if it's weeks later, it triggers the memory of that feeling, that laugh, that connection. You don't have to constantly be around him for him to think about you. You just have to create a moment that felt different from every other interaction he's had. That difference, that disruption, is what makes your presence echo in his mind. And let's be clear, this is not about being manipulative. You're not creating emotion to control him. You're creating it because that's the essence of human connection. Stoicism reminds us that real strength is found in the mastery of emotion, not in its absence. A woman rooted in Stoic relationships understands that she can be emotionally rich without being emotionally needy. She knows how to open up without falling apart. She shares not to be saved, but to invite connection. And that kind of emotional maturity? It is magnetic. Men may not say it outright, but they feel it. They feel when you're grounded in your emotions. When you're not trying to impress, when you're simply being. And in that stillness, you invite depth. That depth creates space for anchors to form. Anchors can also come through contrast. If most of his interactions are superficial, texts, memes, distractions, and then you walk in with presence, with grace, with a well-placed question or an unexpected observation. First, master the art of storytelling. Don't just tell people what happened. Let them feel it. Use detail. Use pace. Let silence do its job. Second, learn to be comfortable with emotion. If something makes you smile, let your eyes light up. If something moves you, allow your tone to shift. That authenticity is magnetic. Third, create rituals. Maybe there's a phrase you use every time you part ways. Maybe there's a question you always ask at the end of your calls. These rituals become personal signatures. Subtle hooks that remind him of you even when you're not there. And lastly, be consistent, but not predictable. Anchors work when there is both familiarity and freshness. Too much routine kills curiosity. But the right amount of consistency builds trust. Anchor moments work best when they feel natural, not forced. What made them stick? What made that one conversation unforgettable? What made that person linger in your thoughts for weeks after? Often, it wasn't just what they said, it was the way they said it. The tone, the timing, the energy. That's what you want to embody. When you speak to a man, you want to leave him with something to remember, not just words, but feelings. And the best part? These moments build naturally when you're aligned with who you are. When you are no longer performing, but connecting. When you show up not trying to get love, but to share your light. That's the paradox of true attraction. The less you try to force it, the more powerful it becomes. And emotional anchors make you unforgettable because they transcend logic. He might meet women who are more traditionally attractive, more flirtatious, more accessible, but they won't be you. They won't carry the emotional resonance you've created. That's why he'll keep thinking about you. That's why your voice will echo in his mind when he hears that song, passes that street, smells that scent. You've made yourself real in his inner world. And that's something no one else can replicate. Now, before we move on to the next strategy, which is arguably one of the most underestimated yet psychologically potent ones, I want you to take a moment and ask yourself, have I ever created an emotional anchor in someone's mind without realizing it? What kind of emotional fingerprint do I leave behind? And if you've made it this far in the video, I want you to do two things: like this video and comment, number 1, below if you're already starting to see how powerful this mindset really is. And of course, subscribe so you don't miss the next part, because what's coming will flip everything you think you know about keeping someone intrigued. Emotional mastery is just beginning. And we're only getting deeper from here. Let's keep going. 3. Be unpredictably consistent. There's a unique power in being someone who is emotionally steady, but never boring. Someone whose presence feels secure, yet whose energy can't be fully anticipated. That paradox. You don't want to be the woman he can figure out in 2 days. And you don't want to be the woman who causes chaos either. You want to sit right at the edge, where your presence is stable. But your rhythm is elusive. Predictability is comforting, but it doesn't stir the imagination. Too much of it breeds familiarity, and in romance, familiarity can dull emotional curiosity and intelligence. But he never knows exactly how. Maybe one day you're lighthearted and teasing, and the next time you're quietly reflective. Maybe you send a thoughtful message when he least expects it, and then you pull back and give space. Maybe you share a part of your world slowly, choosing not to follow a script but to respond intuitively to the moment. What this does is create a subtle tension, one that keeps him emotionally alert around you. His mind starts to anticipate you, but never fully. It's like music with syncopation. Just when he thinks he knows the rhythm, it shifts. And that shift is what keeps him leaning in. It's what makes him pay attention. From a psychological standpoint, this kind of contrast activates the brain's reward centers. We're wired to seek novelty, but we crave safety. When you embody both, by being emotionally grounded yet behaviorally fresh, you create a push-pull dynamic that leaves a man intrigued and slightly off balance in the best possible way. You don't chase. And that's the kind of woman who lingers in his thoughts. But let's go even deeper. In Stoic Relationships, the principle of non-attachment is key. You're not performing for validation. You're not manipulating to provoke jealousy or insecurity. You're showing up as someone whose internal world is vibrant, whose emotional availability is a choice, not a default. And when your actions reflect that autonomy, when you're kind without being submissive, interested without being needy, affectionate without being dependent, it rewrites the script he's used to. Most people move in patterns. They become predictable quickly. But the woman who is emotionally constant but behaviorally nuanced, she disrupts that expectation. She becomes the exception. Why your energy is harder to shake than others. That's the power of emotional sophistication. To cultivate this kind of presence, you have to know yourself deeply. You can't fake nuance. It comes from being connected to your intuition, your values, your desires. One day, your intuition may tell you to initiate. Another day, it might say to stay still. One moment. People often confuse consistency with routine. But routine is mechanical. True consistency is about energy. It's about bringing your full self wherever you go. Even if how you express that self looks different from day to day. It's about emotional reliability without behavioral monotony. And when you master that, people can't help but notice. Men, especially, are drawn to that emotional equilibrium. They feel safe in your steadiness but challenged by your unpredictability. It makes them question themselves, reflect on their own behaviors. Gracefully, without drama, you reawaken his mind and emotions. He stops sleepwalking through romance. He starts leaning forward. He starts thinking. Now let's apply this practically. Being unpredictably consistent means you're not always the first to text, But sometimes you are, and when you are, you do it with warmth and intention. It means you might cancel a plan. But when you do, you offer something even better the next time. It means you give compliments, but not the same ones, not at the same time, and not always when he expects them. It means you flirt playfully one day, and the next you lean into a deeper conversation that throws him off, in a good way. Every interaction becomes an unfolding, a layered experience. Men often complain that they lose interest quickly. What they're really saying is that they stop being emotionally activated. That the dynamic becomes stale, predictable, scripted. But when you embody the principle of being unpredictably consistent, you're never stale. You're grounded, but alive. You don't try to impress, you express. You don't try to entertain, you engage. And in doing so, you invite him into a dynamic that he can't coast through. That tension, that emotional engagement, is what makes him think about you even when he's surrounded by distractions. You're not being inconsistent in your values. You're being fluid in your expression. There's a big difference. And Stoicism helps here. A Stoic woman is in control of herself, not others. She leads with clarity, not confusion. She's not unpredictable because she's messy. She's unpredictable because she's attuned. She's not playing hard to get, she's simply living fully in each moment, letting it shape her response. And that responsiveness makes her exciting, refreshing, and utterly memorable. If you want someone to think about you constantly, don't give them a static version of you. Give them you, the real, living, evolving version. The one who surprises not for the sake of attention, but because she is alive to life. He'll find himself checking his phone, replaying your laugh, trying to guess what you'll say next time. And he won't even realize he's doing it. That's the power of this balance. That's how you leave a psychological imprint that can't be copied. And the best part? It doesn't take effort. It just takes alignment. When you start living from this place of self-anchored emotional fluidity, you become unforgettable, not because you're trying to be, but because you are. That's what happens when consistency meets mystery. When emotional safety meets surprise. When stoicism meets passion. You become the woman he can rely on and the woman he can't predict. You become the moment he replays and the future he wants to explore. That's not a trick. That's a transformation. And it's the reason why he'll think about you, not occasionally, but constantly. 4. Use subtle sensory triggers. If you want someone to think about you constantly, it's not enough to impress their mind. You need to imprint yourself on their senses. The strongest memories are not just logical, they're sensory. Our brains are wired to attach emotion to sensory input. A single smell, a tone of voice, even the texture of someone's skin can transport a person back to a memory that stirs desire, nostalgia, or longing. This is the untapped power of subtle sensory triggers, and when used with grace and intention, they are among the most powerful tools in your feminine arsenal. So many women focus on saying the right things, looking the right way, having the perfect timing, but what if the real power lies in how you make him feel physically, even in the smallest ways? And those whispers echo long after you've left the room. Let's begin with scent. Scent is directly connected to the limbic system, the part of the brain responsible for memory and emotion. This is why certain smells instantly remind us of people or moments, good or bad. Imagine you wear a fragrance that becomes uniquely associated with you. Not one that's trendy or overused, but something elegant, perhaps a little mysterious, chosen intentionally. If you wear it every time you see him, your presence and that scent become linked in his mind. Days or even weeks later. If he smells something similar in the air, you'll resurface in his memory, automatically. That's how powerful this is. But don't stop at fragrance. Think about the tone of your voice. When you speak with softness, slowness, or musicality, you create an auditory pattern that stands apart. If you shift your vocal tone during moments of intimacy, use pauses strategically, or lean in with a whisper at just the right moment, you create an experience that is not just heard, but felt. That experience gets stored in his body memory. Every time he hears a similar cadence, your voice will echo in the background of his mind. Now let's go deeper into the sense of touch. A light, intentional touch on the arm, shoulder, or back during conversation creates a physical imprint. But here's the nuance. It must be brief, almost casual, and never overused. You don't want to create expectation, you want to create surprise. The brain remembers contrast more than repetition. If you're usually composed and poised, and then, at just the right moment, you break that pattern with a subtle, warm touch. Even the way you walk into a room can be a sensory trigger. The sound of your heels, the rhythm of your steps, the energy in your posture, it creates a visual and auditory memory. And they work best when they are authentic. Stoicism teaches us to be fully present, grounded in self, unmoved by external chaos. When you live from that place, your energy carries weight. They become a natural expression of your internal state. You're not manipulating sensation, you're radiating presence. That presence becomes unforgettable. And presence is everything. And those visceral moments are what stay lodged in a man's mind, long after logic would have let you go. Let's talk about visual triggers. Color, style, silhouette, these are all visual cues that a bold red can begin to create visual memory. Eventually, he will start to associate that color with you. If you often wear silk or linen, he will begin to remember the texture of you, not just how you looked, but how it all felt. Again, these things sound small, but they're huge. Because when the sensory system is activated with emotion, the brain saves it. It stores it with priority. And later, when he least expects it, he sees that shade of red, smells that floral note, hears that softness in another voice. Your memory will rise like smoke through his subconscious. This is how subtle sensory triggers keep you alive in his world, even in your absence. They make your memory multidimensional. But for this to work in its most powerful form, you must remain unattached to the result. You are not doing these things to make him obsessed. You're doing them because you understand the elegance of embodied living. You move with awareness, you dress with intention. Stoicism reminds us that we cannot control others, only ourselves. The paradox is, the more we master our own energy, the more naturally we influence others without needing to force anything. That's what makes these sensory imprints so potent. They are not demands, they are invitations. They linger because they are not overwhelming. They create space for the other person to fill in the emotion. And when a man starts filling in his own emotions, tied to you, anchored in senses, you are no longer just a woman he met. You become a memory, a feeling, a state of being. That's why he thinks about you constantly. Because every day is full of sensory input. And if you've left your mark on those inputs, you live in his world, without needing to do anything more. Now ask yourself this: what do people associate with me? Is my presence felt through scent, sound, or energy? Am I using my senses consciously, or am I rushing through moments with no awareness of how I show up? This is about refinement. About slowing down. About owning your space so completely that your smallest gesture carries weight. So don't underestimate the power of a glance. Don't dismiss the effect of a pause. Don't overlook the memory that lives in the smell of your perfume or the texture of your dress. Those details, they matter. They stay. And they speak long after you've said goodbye. If you're still with me now. 5. Mirror his energy. Then lead it. If you want to become a woman who quietly takes up space in his mind, who lingers long after the conversation has ended, then you must understand the deep psychological power of emotional attunement. This is not about copying or pretending. This is about creating unconscious resonance, a kind of invisible harmony that makes a man feel seen and understood. Humans are biologically wired to respond to familiarity. We feel drawn to people who reflect back pieces of ourselves. When someone mirrors our tone, our body language, our rhythm, It activates a sense of connection, a sense of, "This person gets me." It lowers our guard. It opens the door to trust. And when a woman can match a man's emotional tempo, not perfectly, but intentionally, it sends a powerful message. I'm not here to overpower or chase, but I'm paying attention. That attention is everything. In Stoic relationships, presence is a form of intimacy. And mirroring is one of the highest forms of presence. When you respond to his energy in real time, when you meet him where he is emotionally, whether he's quiet, intense, playful, or reflective, you create rapport without words. It's subtle, but he feels it. He may not even know why he feels so at ease, so engaged, so pulled in, but the sensation is real. And once rapport is established, something incredible happens. You can begin to shift the dynamic, gently. You mirror first to build connection. Then you lead to create influence. Leading doesn't mean dominating. It means inviting him into your rhythm. Once he feels safe and synchronized with you, his nervous system begins to trust your energy. That's when you guide the mood, the direction of the conversation, even the pace of emotional intimacy. Maybe he starts off reserved, holding back. You mirror that by not pushing. You match his restraint with your own grace. But then, as the connection deepens, you slowly reveal more of your warmth, your humor, your insight. You shift the emotional frequency, and he begins to follow, not because he's being controlled, but because he feels drawn in. This kind of emotional intelligence is rare, and it's incredibly attractive. Men don't want to be told how to feel, but they do respond to environments that make them feel more fully themselves. When you lead with presence and attunement, you become that environment. You become the emotional context where he feels both grounded and elevated. That duality is unforgettable. Now, let's talk about how to do this in real life. Start with observation. Watch how he carries himself. Is he high energy or calm? Direct or layered? Does he speak quickly or slowly? Is his humor dry or expressive? By noticing these patterns without judgment, you begin to understand his emotional language. Then, when you engage, you reflect that language in your own subtle way. You're not trying to match him 100%. You're aligning just enough to say, "I see you." From there, as the connection builds, you shift. You speak a little slower, a little softer. You laugh with more freedom. You hold eye contact a little longer. You introduce a new tone, a calm steadiness if he's anxious, or a playful lightness if he's serious. And because he already feels synchronized with you, he doesn't resist the shift. He follows it. But about embodying values so fully that others naturally respond. You're not trying to change him. You're offering a different emotional vibration, and letting him choose to meet you there. This is the art of feminine leadership. It's quiet, graceful, and deeply felt. And it works because it honors autonomy. It respects his pace while inviting transformation. That invitation is powerful. He connects that experience to you. And that connection doesn't fade easily. Now, this requires self-awareness. You can't lead if you're emotionally reactive. You must know your own rhythm before you can invite someone into it. This is where Stoic relationships are so foundational. A Stoic woman is anchored. She doesn't chase highs. She doesn't panic in lows. Her energy is consistent, even when her behavior is flexible. She can mirror a storm without becoming it. And she can guide others to calm without needing control. You don't do this to be liked. You don't do it to get attention. You do it because it reflects who you are. A woman who leads with emotional precision doesn't need to raise her voice. Not the explosive kind that burns out fast, but the kind that grows over time. It's the slow build of tension, of trust, of depth. And that is what makes a man keep coming back, not just in body, but in thought. He replays your energy. He wonders how you do it. He tries to figure out why he feels more alive around you than with anyone else. That's because you've engaged him on a level most people never reach. You've seen him, mirrored him, then invited him to see more of himself through you. and that invitation becomes addictive. Think about it, most conversations are transactional. People speak to be heard, not to understand. But when you mirror someone's energy and then elevate it, you offer more than interaction. You offer transformation. And the brain remembers transformation. It remembers where it felt safe to expand. It remembers who helped it get there. That's you. You become a reference point in his emotional history. And the more self-aware he becomes, the more he will associate that shift with your presence. That's how you stay in his thoughts, not because you demand space there, but because you earned it through alignment, not effort. So next time you're with someone you want to build connection with, don't ask, "What can I say to impress him?" Ask instead, "What is his rhythm? How can I enter it without losing mine? And how can I elevate it without forcing it?" Those questions shift the entire dynamic. They take you out of reactive energy and into intentional leadership. That kind of presence is rare, and rare is unforgettable. When you become the woman who doesn't just talk, but listens, mirrors, guides, and leads with grace, you don't just take up space in his mind. You shape it. You influence the way he feels about himself. And when a man feels more whole in your presence, he will always return to you. Maybe not immediately. Maybe not in ways you expect. But you will live in his psyche in a way no one else does. Not because of what you gave, but because of who you were while you gave it. A leader. A mirror. A muse. A storm, and the stillness behind it. 6. Leave on a high note. One of the most underestimated yet psychologically powerful ways to make someone think about you constantly is knowing when and how to exit a moment. Whether it's a conversation, a date, a call, is what lingers in the subconscious. And this is where the art of leaving on a high note becomes your secret weapon. It's about timing. It's about intuition. When a moment peaks, when laughter is flowing, when tension is delicious, when connection is at its height, that's your cue. You leave with warmth, with spark, with a tone in your voice that makes him wish the moment lasted longer. That craving is powerful. It's what makes someone lie awake and replay your words. You stop over-explaining. You stop stretching out moments out of fear they won't come again. Instead, you trust your energy. You trust the weight of your presence. The ending must elevate the entire experience. So what does that look like? Sometimes it's ending a date not with awkward silence, but with a soft smile and a whispered, "You're trouble," but in the best kind of way. Talk soon. Other times it's ending a deep conversation with something unexpected, like switching from serious to playful at just the right second. "Okay. Before I tell you my deepest secrets, you have to earn them. Next round's on you." These moments don't close the connection, they amplify it. They leave him with elevated emotion. They leave space. And space is where desire grows. Space allows the mind to wander, to imagine, to crave more of what it just experienced. When you stretch out every conversation until it fades. When you stay longer than the emotional peak, you flatten the moment. You risk overexposure. But when you leave with intention, when you end before the energy dips, you create a loop in his mind that hasn't closed. And humans are wired to close loops. That unfinished loop becomes your echo. It brings his thoughts back to you without you saying another word. And here's what most people get wrong. They try to be unforgettable by doing more. More talking. More texting. More showing up. But often, unforgettable moments are born from less. Less chasing. Less explaining. Less fear. Stoicism, again, is your guide here. In Stoicism, there is beauty in restraint, strength in silence, confidence in endings. A Stoic woman knows she is enough. She knows that presence is more powerful than persistence. And because of that, she doesn't fear walking away while the moment is still golden. She knows the glow will linger. Now let's go deeper. Leaving on a high note also means emotional pacing. You don't give your entire heart in one meeting. You don't emotionally overshare to create false closeness. You let intimacy unfold. And when it does, you protect its sacredness by not exhausting it. This keeps the energy alive. This makes every interaction feel like a step into something deeper, not a sprint to the finish line. And it communicates something very subtle but very powerful to him, that you are a woman who values energy, who protects her own time, her own rhythm. That self-respect creates admiration. And admiration is a higher level of attraction. It's not just lust or affection, it's reverence. When you exit a moment with poise, when you say, "I'd love to stay, but I've got an early morning," or, "Let's leave it here, before it gets too perfect," you send a clear signal. I am in control of my time. I am in control of my experience. And I trust that if this is real, it doesn't need to be overfed. That trust is magnetic. Because it shows you are not afraid of space. You are not afraid to step back. You are not afraid to leave things slightly unfinished. And that's what makes him chase closure through memory. He replays the interaction, looking for clues. He wonders what would have happened if you stayed 5 minutes longer. The way you look back with a smile. The way you gently touch his arm as you say goodbye. These micro moments carry emotional weight. They communicate volumes. They linger in the body. They don't need to be explained. They just work. But you must be present enough to feel the moment rising, to recognize its peak, and to honor it with a graceful exit. This takes self-control. You are savoring the process. You are not afraid of silence, space, or endings, because you understand their role in desire. When you operate from this mindset, everything shifts. You no longer feel the need to impress. You no longer talk past the peak. You let your energy do the work. And it does. Because when a man experiences the full presence of a woman who leaves before her energy dips, he feels the lack. He feels the contrast when you're gone. And that contrast becomes a craving. Craving turns into thought. Thought turns into memory. And memory turns into longing. That's how he starts thinking about you, not randomly, but rhythmically. Because you've created a rhythm in his nervous system. A rise and a pause. A presence and a space. A taste and a distance. That rhythm is unforgettable. It's a melody he wants to hear again. And every time he imagines it, it's your energy that plays in the background. So as we wrap this final part, remember this: being unforgettable isn't about being perfect. It's about being intentional. It's about understanding the psychology of connection and the emotional intelligence of timing. It's about knowing yourself so well that you can walk away from moments fully satisfied, knowing that you've left behind a spark that needs no chasing. That spark is your legacy in his mind. That spark is what keeps him thinking about you constantly. So if this video resonated with you, if you're beginning to see how these subtle shifts can transform not only how you connect with others, but how you feel about yourself, then let me know by clicking the like button and commenting, number 1, below. And subscribe right now, because this channel is about something bigger than just attraction. It's about emotional evolution. It's about stoicism, mastery, and owning your feminine power in a way that's irresistible, not because you chase, but because you are. The next video is coming, and trust me, you do not want to miss what's next. In the end, what truly makes someone think about you constantly has far less to do with what you give and far more to do with what you leave behind. It's not about chasing, overgiving, or bending yourself into shapes to impress. It's about how deeply you're anchored in yourself, so much so that your energy becomes a quiet revolution in their world. When you step fully into your power, into your presence, into your truth, something shifts, not just in how others perceive you, but in how they remember you. And memory, in its most haunting form, is not based on logic, it's based on emotion. It's tied to curiosity, to tension, to rhythm, to desire. It's embedded in the peaks and pauses of your interactions, in the silence you let breathe, in the scent that lingered a second too long, in the phrase that was almost a confession but not quite. The woman who understands this isn't desperate to be noticed. She's devoted to being felt. Because she knows that attention is cheap, but presence is priceless. And presence doesn't mean being loud. It doesn't mean being everywhere. It means showing up with such intentionality. She knows that mystery isn't created by withholding, but by revealing selectively. She knows that emotional anchors are forged not through oversharing, but through shared feeling. She understands the art of being unpredictably consistent, not erratic, but alive. And she knows that her energy is her essence, that when she touches someone through words, glance, tone, or silence, she's not trying to impress, she's imprinting. That depth cannot be faked. And when a man meets that kind of woman, when he experiences even a taste of her inner world, her rhythm, her stillness, her playfulness, her restraint, he remembers. Even if he doesn't understand why. Even if he's distracted, busy, or pretending he doesn't care, somewhere inside him. The memory of her lives. Stoicism reminds us that power lies in discipline. That to influence the world around us, we must first master the world within us. The woman who becomes unforgettable is not perfect, she's integrated. She knows her strengths and her shadows. She walks with softness and certainty. She's not performing for approval, she's radiating authenticity. And because she doesn't need to be chosen, she's often the one people can't forget. That paradox is everything. Over those who meet them where they are and then elevate them through unexpected energy. The world is full of noise. But the woman who learns to use silence, story, scent, tone, movement, timing, and restraint, she becomes a symphony. Not in volume, but in vibration. She becomes the unresolved melody that plays in his head while he's driving, working, lying in bed. Not because she demanded space, but because she earned it, through self-awareness, through rhythm, through power that whispers instead of screams. And what's most beautiful is that this version of you doesn't require you to be anything other than yourself. It simply requires you to slow down, to observe, to respond, not react, to trust your energy, to believe that your presence is enough, that you don't need to convince anyone of your value. You need only embody it. When you live this way, you start to notice something. The world responds differently. People pause when you speak. They remember details about you. They quote your words. They want to be around your energy even if they can't explain why. That's not accidental. That's what happens when you move through life with inner congruence, with emotional clarity, with stoic grace. You can make someone think about you constantly, but not by chasing, not by clinging, not by trying harder. You do it by mastering your moments, by creating emotional weight, by exiting on a high, by being a mirror, a muse, a mystery, and most importantly, by becoming a woman whose energy doesn't beg, but resonates. Over time, that resonance becomes a memory. That memory becomes a longing. And that longing brings them back, not because you forced them to remember, but because forgetting you simply became impossible. That is the quiet, unshakable power of a woman who knows her worth. That is the transformation from being liked to being etched into their psyche. That is Stoic relationships in action. That is feminine stoicism in its most radiant form. And that is who you were always meant to be,